Are you fellas ready?
Let's get it.
Yes, sir.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Stoop Life Podcast. Now, today is going to be. I can't even talk because I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this episode. But guys, we got you guys another episode of the Stoop Life Debates. We welcome back our man Steve Taylor coming in the ring, and we got a newcomer to the gauntlet. We got Rock St. Patrick coming in. Now, I'm going to take a side out here. I'm going to give it to Paul because I'm too excited to talk about what we're going to be debating about today. So, Paul, tell them what we're going to be debating about today because I feel like I just did a bunch of cocaine. I'm too excited.
Oh, then you're perfect for this. Listen, we are going to be talking about the WWE right now. We are going full-fledged Taker versus Stone Cold. Arguably the two biggest names that came out of the Attitude Era at that. This is perfect. This is something different from basketball, football, boxing, MMA. This is great. I'm going to let y'all go at it, man. I want to hear some shit.
I do want to point out the fact you're wearing a WrestleMania shirt and Steve is wearing an Undertaker shirt. Rock, don't got none of them. But, hey, I'm going to give you that. So, to give you guys an update, we got, obviously, Steve is taking Undertaker and Rock is taking Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, we know how this goes. You know, it's a little bit different because it's quote-unquote fake, but it ain't fake. If you were in the 90s, WWE was real. It's still real, and I still do half these moves that these guys do today. I do it to my dog. I do it to my nieces. I do it all.
So, when you got kids, bro. Listen, when you got kids, you do suplex them a couple of times. Trust me.
Give them the rock bottom, the stunner, the pile driver, all of them. And we're going to talk about all that shit today with these guys. So we know how it is. So, Steve, as always, you were first into the room. As always. I'm gonna let you fix it.
Steve was in there at 6:30 waiting for you. Who you fooling?
Yeah. I pulled in. He's in here. I said 7:20, so I knew he was in here at 7:15. So I was like, all right, let me get it. So it's your call, Steve. Heads or tails?
We're gonna go with tails.
Go with tails. We got on the phone here. Boom. Always. You guys know I'm not cheating. We got tails. We got tails on the phone. So it's your take. You want to go first, or do you want to give the floor to Stone Cold Steve Austin?
I mean, he's in the dark, so I guess you know what? He's already in the dark. Let's keep him in the dark. I think I'm gonna go first.
Ooh.
All right, let's hit it.
All right, so where do I start? What I will say is that these are hands down, not just two of my favorite, probably my two favorite guys, ever. Highly influential, just, personifies greatness. But I think a lot of us, because, obviously you guys did the poll, a lot of people just run with Stone Cold's popularity and think that is the end all be all to the argument. I think it puts him above everybody, like, guys like Hulk Hogan, who were just super popular at their peak, The Rock, obviously, Taker, HBK, guys like that. But I'm going to break down why, as great as Stone Cold is, and I'm going to be honest with you, stuff I'm about to say, I'm probably going to think I'm like low key hating or he's not my guy, he's my guy. Like, we got the same first name, like, highly relatable and stuff. But I think a lot of people never sat back and really took an honest and objective look about him as a wrestler or his career. So I'm gonna show you why, as great as he is, and I'm still putting him over just about everybody but Undertaker. Which is no disrespect to the Hulk Hogan's of the world. I think he's a little overrated. HBK, he won all the belts. Man, The Rock is the GOAT on the mic with the promos, and he's just a physical specimen. He was college athlete. But the reason why even putting Stone Cold above all those guys, the reason why you don't put him over Taker, it's the first and most obvious thing. Everybody knows the Undertaker has the best gimmick. It's not even close. It's hands down. And there's actual statistics and things you can use to prove this. Like, they're wrestling magazines, which is not the end all be all, but they do vote on a lot of different things. No guy has won best gimmick more than the Undertaker. And this is how great his run was. He won it 5 straight years, which 5 is the most anybody has ever won it. He won it 5 straight years from 1990 to 94. And then after that, he solidified. He's proved his point will open up the field so other guys can get it. But we know, truth be told, 94 was really just the beginning of his prime. So he could have won it afterwards, but I guess they kind of capped it with, the whole SummerSlam thing, the fake Undertaker. But hands down, he has the best gimmick. And part of the reason he has the gimmick is the look. When you see his face, when you hear that dong and that bell it just does something. It sends chills down your spine. You could be a little kid and be ready to shit your pants, but it's like it's so scary, it's so good. I can't take my eyes away, even though it completely creeps me out. And then if you're an adult, he's still an intimidating figure to other wrestlers behind the curtain in the ring. When you step into that ring with him, is greatness personified. And part of the other things that made his gimmick so great, which we can't say about Stone Cold, and it's not a knock, but he has a classic manager. Just the name Paul Bearer, what it means to the character, the earn, the look, their chemistry, everything about it made his gimmick top notch. Which is why the anticipation and the build up for him was on a pay per view. He made his debut on one of the WWE. I call it WWE. I fuck it WWE because that's when it kind of got weak to me. So I'm always going to refer to it as WWF. But one of their big four pay-per-views was, you got Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, which is like the Super Bowl, SummerSlam, and then Survivor Series. This character build up this mystery. Who is, Ted DiBiase's team? Who's the mystery partner? All of that build up, and then you see him, and then it's that classic music, that debut, and then he's just like a monster. You can't hurt him. He gets in the ring. He does some bonehead stuff and ends up, eliminating himself. But right away from the first tombstone, from everything, his gimmick is top notch. Another thing you have to consider, not just his theme song and that music, but the whole Titantron. This is another thing. He's the best ever. When his music hits, the lights get dark, the smoke comes out right before he steps into the ring. Nobody has a complete and better Titantron, down to the costumes he would wear at these big pay-per-views. He checks all the boxes. And then here's the other thing. We can't say this about Stone Cold. Undertaker character is so great that you have another Hall of Fame spinoff character from his and Kane. Let's be honest. Stone Cold, as much as he is he's a wizard on the mic. I think he's a little bit underrated and doesn't get enough credit for that. But let's be honest, he has a pretty basic gimmick. He hates his boss like most people, which is why he's relatable. He wants to drink beer and he wants to, kick ass. Now, most people think they can fight and can't, so that's why they love him. They love to see him do stuff that they know they really actually can't do. But his gimmick is pretty basic. He couldn't even effectively heel turn. Once the whole his whole character is the pursuit of getting the belt, and if he has it, or fighting people as the number one contender in his feud with Vince McMahon. Once he joined forces with Vince McMahon on that heel turn at WrestleMania 17, which had, by the way, a pretty bad ending. I think that was the best random WrestleMania ever, and that was a classic match with him and Rock. But the way it ended, that whole thing, played out in the end, I think it could have been better. But part of the reason it was bad is because we pretty much killed his character once you kind of make him join forces with Vince. And let's be honest, his career never recovered after that. Part of it was getting older and injuries, but that bad heel turn kind of like zapped him. We can't say that about Undertaker. You can spin off and have another Hall of Fame character. You can have, like you said, we know wrestling's not real, or is it real? But that storyline of Kane, and does he have a brother, and the funeral home getting burned to the ground, and he's never seen his brother, and then another classic match in the Hell in a Cell with HBK, he rips off the door. He's as big as Undertaker, because you got to remember, guys back then, you only had a couple: Andre the Giant, Psycho Sid. You didn't have a bunch of big 7 foot 300 pound dudes. And lo and behold, now you have somebody who is an effective character that we can spin off of this Hall of Fame character. And Stone Cold couldn't even effective heel turn. So how can we compare him and say that his greatness is better? We're not talking about peak popularity, because again, his peak popularity is almost unmatched. But once we get past that, everything that the whole Attitude Era encompassed, Undertaker was right there. Every main event, the first ever Monday Night Raw, who was the main event there? That would happen to be the Undertaker. He won the match, of course, but he set the bar for so many things. Stone Cold, back when Raw was first, premiering, he was in WCW just trying to figure out the wrestling business and how to work a match and different stuff. Undertaker was already world champion, main eventer, a guy you just put in the ring with somebody where you want to get them over. How many people, their career took new heights just by coming under his wing or having a classic match with him? Stone Cold, as great as he was, as popular as he was, Show me a time where somebody really got pushed over in the business by doing a match with him. It didn't happen. It was always somebody had to already be main event status to match him. And while we're talking about main events, and this is the last thing I'll say, then I'll pass it to Rock. Show me another person who has been more box office as far as pay-per-view special matches, anything you can think of in the entire 90s. Buried Alive, First Blood matches, Inferno, Hell in a Cell, casket match. Undertaker's right there. You put him again. You put him with another superstar, or you put him with an up and coming guy, and he takes it over. And then now all of these guys are big main eventers. You know, guys that he helped push over that with mid tier stars like Edge and Christian. You know, even the Hardys. Those guys were tag team guys. Once they started going solo, okay, even if Undertaker beats him, now we can raise their hand in this special match or a certain moment, and then boom, he elevates guys. So, and then of course the streak. Stone Cold has nothing in his entire career. He went to his main events that compares to the streak. I mean, there's just so many things, but I think that's enough for now. Rock, you could try to attempt to offset those things.
All right, here we go. And I love your argument for the Undertaker. I have great respect for the Undertaker. As a kid growing up, when you watch wrestling, you watch it for a handful of people. Undertaker being one of them. So I'm going to give respect where respect's due. But now, let's get into the man of the hour. Okay. Stone Cold Steve Austin. When wrestling wasn't cool, when a group of people, because a lot of people watch wrestling, the old school timers, but like when Stone Cold came to the WWF and that whole Attitude Era, it brought new people in by the masses. Stone Cold, like you said, was a relatable guy. Everybody in that time, there's a lot of people in this world, all of us included, could say they wanted to punch their boss at one point in their life. And being wrestling, a big thing about wrestling, which comes with Stone Cold, is entertainment. Where, yes, the Undertaker brings the darkness, the Titantron, but once that glass broke, you knew all hell was about to break loose. We all used to turn into wrestling on Mondays, Sundays, just to see what Stone Cold was going to do. The beer drinking. We're all just average guys wanting to go out there and whoop ass. And Stone Cold was that guy. Everybody could relate to Stone Cold. Everybody loved watching the McMahons get stunned. The Rock. It's all the entertainment, the people that went in. When we talk about in the ring, brawler, Stone Cold brought that aggressiveness every match. There wasn't a match where Stone Cold wasn't aggressive or he was on the weak side. He was always throwing punches. Very good technical wrestler. You didn't see Stone Cold do all the crazy moves off the top of the rope, snapmares, DDTs, spine busters, and iconically one of the best finishing moves ever. The stunner. Everybody in this chat right now has probably caught a stunner from a cousin, a brother, and got the middle fingers after. There's probably a lot of kids in the world that probably got in trouble in the parents because all they wanted to do was throw up the middle fingers. A badass. An anti-hero. We all love an anti-hero. When you talk about influence on other characters, one of the biggest influence and people that he probably helped career, one of the biggest names in the world, one of the biggest movie stars in the world is now The Rock. A lot of people, all the talking that The Rock did, Stone Cold was doing that. A master of the mic. Stone Cold could cut a promo. The most legendary promo ever cut, improvised, is when he beat Jake the Snake Roberts. And he said, you can do all your Bible thumping and praying, and what did that get you? But Austin 3:16 just says, I whooped your ass. Legendary. Talking about iconic. Now, granted, The Undertaker has longevity. Yes, he wrestled for 30 years. The WrestleMania all the WrestleMania wins, right? But when it comes to promos to WrestleMania, Stone Cold and The Rock is probably the most legendary 3-match series we ever saw. Nobody that Undertaker ever beefed with was a bigger beef than The Rock and Stone Cold, or even Stone Cold and the McMahons. We never saw Undertaker chokeslam the whole McMahon family, but we saw Stone Cold stunted the whole McMahon family, and the crowd would go wild. The popularity that Stone Cold had between 96 and you could say up to 2003, even though his popularity dropped when he switched heel, but he always come back with something. We all remember the what chant. Something so stupid becomes so iconic to the world. The Undertaker has been in the WWE longer than Stone Cold, but Stone Cold is the highest selling sales of merchandise ever in the WWE, still to this day. And he stopped wrestling in 2003, 2004. The memorable moments that you could remember on TV, when Stone Cold went into the supermarket and beat Booker T up, threw milk on him, hit him with a pizza. I remember growing up, going to the store with my friends. We were in a grocery store. I'd pick up a rack of lamb and hit him with something. Just because all Stone Cold Steve Austin did to Booker T. Him showing up at the McMahon at the hospital, beating him up dressed as a doctor, or when he was the firefighter, beating up McMahon again. So many things that you see that just repeated that everybody still loved, no matter if it just was repetitive or not. When you talk about Stone Cold, it's legendary. It's iconic. It's almost like you could say in the wrestling world, Jordan-esque. Yes, you got longevity, but from 92 to 98, I was bull. There was nobody greater. And you could also say that in wrestling, there's no more iconic than Stone Cold Steve Austin from a short period of time. Like, it's just legendary. He's still going on with his podcast. He's did movies. He's done a little bit of everything, and everybody still loves Stone Cold. Respectable person, great in the ring, never really injured nobody. I mean, his career was cut short because of injuries, a broken neck, knees going bad. When he was in the sharpshooter, he passed out himself from the pain and didn't give up. Like, this is the guy we're kind of talking about.
Still lost.
And sorry,
he lost. No, I'm saying that was a great moment, but he still lost. Imagine being in your first 2 or 3 WrestleManias
Can you not win in a
and
loss?
already
Is there not lessons
losing.
won in a loss?
Listen, at the end of the day, I hear all of what you're saying, but I think there's
Yeah,
a
but he still got a
distinction.
champion's welcome on the way out. That says something. Go ahead.
I mean, the loser of the Super Bowl gets a conference championship ring too, but most people don't know that because they don't celebrate it because losing doesn't get celebrated. So I just want to address a couple of things. I think you said that to me. I'm not gonna lie, they were completely ridiculous. Stone Cold was not used to get the Rock over because before Stone Cold even really caught his stride in WWF, Rock was already making a name for himself. He's a third generation superstar. His grandfather was a wrestler. His dad, Rocky Johnson, was a champion and had an iconic tag team that he was a part of. So he came in as the third generation superstar, and they were kind of overselling him a little bit. Once they kind of pulled back, let him do his own thing, and then because he was so great on the mic, and he kind of in a sense became the anti-hero, where they're chanting Rocky sucks, and then they switch, and then they love him, and then it's just Rocky, Rocky, and then eventually he wins his first championship at Survivor Series '98. Rock was a superstar and legendary and already had classic matches. He already
Okay,
had intercontinental
this is what I
title
was
run,
saying. Your
classic
point.
rivalry with Triple H. So that's just completely wrong. You're trying your best to build Stone Cold up because you have to go off
No, but
short term.
listen. I
That's all you
understand your
have to
point, but
work
you
with.
also got to remember that the
And he
events
lost the
for who
biggest
wins and
match of his
loses
career. He lost.
are staged.
And So that actually further makes the point, bro. He's so popular. He's so this. He's that. This is our Super Bowl, and we get to actually determine the outcome, and we still make him lose. Explain that. How does that doesn't make any sense?
Because Stone Cold was on his way out. The last match with The Rock.
Did he lose because Stone Cold said so? Yeah, Vince, just tell me to lose, and I'll sign the match, and then I'm just going to work for you.
Stone Cold won the first 2 matches at WrestleMania against The Rock. Did he not?
We're not talking about The Rock. We're talking about his classic match with Bret Hart, the one that you brought up.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, let me tell you a story because maybe you didn't know this. So, and this is why even though sports entertainment is entertainment, the gamesmanship. Part of the gamesmanship, Undertaker was always he always understood the assignment. He was always prepared. The first match, and I'm very pissed off about this because I was supposed to be at WrestleMania 15, but that's a whole nother story. That was in Philly. Long story short, a bunch of my homies was going. My mom knew the one homie better than the other. Something happened where we didn't go, and I was supposed to be there. But had I been there, I would have been a little bit disappointed, and here's why. Stone Cold talked about how I don't know if he was going through a divorce, he just had an argument in his wife, whatever the case may be, he was getting into something. Upon him doing that, he's supposed to be packing and getting his stuff ready for the Super Bowl of the WWF, which is WrestleMania. The first time he's fighting The Rock in a main event for a major title, right? And he doesn't pack everything in his suitcase. So instead of him coming out there decked out with the vest, this is WrestleMania. It's in a big market in a big city in Philly. He comes out there with a funky T-shirt, and not even the classic Austin 316 shirt. It's some random rattlesnake shirt that nobody remembers or knows because it wasn't iconic. And this was an iconic moment, and just that coming to the ring in your best, being ready for their Super Bowl. Doing Undertaker never did that. Every time he had a WrestleMania entrance, this was classic. When you had the Druids, when you had the Firebone, he had the stuff. He had his Lord of Darkness stuff on. He always understood the assignment and made sure that fans got their money's worth. And he was very technical about everything that he did down to the T. This is little things that maybe in the grand scheme of him being a wrestler may not be the biggest thing, but he never missed. That's the key. He always had consistency. He always was able, and his character evolved. It isn't like he just had to remember to bring his one little vest, and he had the same costume for 20 years. He had, he went from the dead man with this look, then he took it to, the mid 90s. Then he had the Lord of Darkness look. Then he's the American Badass. Then he's Big Evil. Then he's just a phenom. He always had evolution with his character, but he never said, "Oh, you know what? I didn't, switch my character up a little bit. Oops, I forgot something, and now I don't complete the look." He never did that.
So what you're telling me is you fought Stone Cold over a one uniform incident?
No, what I'm saying is at the end of the day, when you understand the assignment, it wasn't like he missed it on a random Monday night. We're talking about WrestleMania. We're talking about this is the granddaddy of them all. They're building you up. You're about to win the championship. The other guy's coming out doing his thing. Everybody, Undertaker was undercard that year. He just fought Big Boss Man, but he didn't look and say, "Hey, I'm not fighting the A+ wrestler. Let me forget my costume. Let me tell Paul Bearer to, not bring the urn or something like that." He always was on point and on target. And what I'm saying is, this is one example, but there's times that Stone Cold wasn't at his best, and people overlooked it just because they liked him. That's my bottom line.
Well, looks like we lost him. I think he got stunnered. Yo, I'm just gonna tell you to keep going. Oh, here he is. Here we go.
So I had a little
listen, technical difficulties happen. We want you to respond to everything. It's all good.
Right, technical difficulty, just like Stone Cold and the WrestleMania. Right, I understand what you're saying, right? But that's one thing on a scale, right? We don't fault Jordan for not being the best 3-point shooter, right? No, we don't. Like, yes, when it comes to WrestleManias, Undertaker got that. I never said that he didn't have it. When it came to WrestleMania on the stage, the man done I can't tell you what, almost 20 plus WrestleManias to Stone Cold's 7. Yes,
Yeah.
in that category, the Undertaker takes it, right?
I mean, this is the thing. As great as Stone Cold was,
And
how come he was
as
like?
a merchandise
This
with the
is the
money
thing,
count,
though. So
Stone
this is the
Cold
thing. So
takes that. When it comes to
well,
like I said, Undertaker has a better entrance, but that glass
that's
break
not
is a little
it.
bit more iconic than that belt.
That's equal level. You're crazy. That bong and the glass break is equal level. You can't really say one's above the other, which I would say, like, at the end of the day, if you pick one or the other, that's favoritism, but they're on the same level. So to say one completely dominates the other, that's ridiculous. But the other thing you're not taking into consideration that you said, and since you brought it up earlier, I'm going to address it. You tried to talk up Stone Cold's in-ring performance. Let's be honest. He's not a bad in-ring performer. Let's not get that confused. However, he's not as good as you're making him out to be. He has 4 moves. His finishing move, the stunner, the little thing where he's trying to stomp a more huddle on you in the corner, the little thing where he jumps on you, he's hitting you, and after he does that, he does the little thing in the elbow. He's got 4 moves. That's it. Undertaker, we obviously got the tombstone. Then when he switches finisher to the American Bash, you got the last ride, you got the choke slam, you got old school when he walks the tightrope, you got the iconic leg drop on the outside of the turnbuckle, a lot better than Hulk Hogan's weak leg drop. That's a whole other thing. You got the suicide dive, you got the flying clothesline. Like the list goes on and on. Even later in his career, where he's adding different things, you got Hell's Gate. He has a submission. Who saw that coming, right? And he's a 300-pound dude. And oh, by the way, him being a 330-pound dude, he's what, like 75, 80 pounds better than Stone Cold. He has more agility. He's able to do stuff Stone Cold just can't do. So even if you're just talking strictly in ring performance, it's not even close, bro. Undertaker is head and shoulders better. And he set the bar for other super heavyweights to say,
Oh
look,
no,
you
I
can't just
agree.
be the big, slow guy. You have to actually have agility and have moves and be able to work a match and rock a crowd. He set the bar for not just the superstars, but super heavyweights as well.
No, I agree there. I agree there. Also, we can also say that when it comes to like the real aggressive style wrestling, when Stone Cold was a very aggressive wrestler. Yes, he had basic moves, but he was the aggressiveness that he brought with his moves. You could see
His
that in the
aggressiveness,
progression in the
his
WWF
his
of people getting way more aggressive, like in their moves.
his aggressiveness actually ruined matches. And I'm gonna give you a perfect example. So most people would agree the best match between the Undertaker and Stone Cold, both at their peaks, storylines amazing. You have this quote unquote highway to hell build up with the soundtrack and all that. SummerSlam '98. Most people would say that is their best match together. It's just the most complete. The WWF Championship was on the line, and albeit Stone Cold did win, but here's the thing: him being aggressive in that match and timing and again in-ring performance not being A on that A level, but maybe C plus. Undertaker is working a move, and Stone Cold being the aggressive little hothead that he is sometimes. He crashes the Undertaker. Undertaker comes up because they missed time and he gets headbutt. And Stone Cold to this day will say he thought that match could have been better because he was knocked out cold and unconscious, and the ref had to help him along, all because of a missed time, all because, like I said, he's a little bit of a not terrible, but he's a little bit of an underwhelming in-ring performer, and that aggressiveness could have potentially ruined the main event of a pay-per-view. But because you have somebody the caliber of an Undertaker who's just better in ring anyway, he can carry the match and do stuff. Like everything we remember from that match, it was Undertaker. It was the choke slam from over the top rope and bringing him back in. It was that crazy leg drop he did from the top turnbuckle through the table, and the table didn't give as much as it should. But all of the highlights, for the most part, outside of the Stunner and Stone Cold retaining the belt, was due to Undertaker. This was a great pay-per-view. This was still a classic match, but it could have been ruined by that had he not been there with a skilled veteran. So this is all of the points you're saying is just you're trying to like sweep the main things under the rug and just trying to oversell his greatness in ring. It's just not true.
Right. I could say I get lost in that category as in-ring performer, but and that's one part of wrestling, right? But the entertainment side, you cannot say that doesn't go to Stone Cold. Promos cut,
Listen,
anything off
Undertaker
stage.
has limitations with promo just because of his character. He's monotone. He's the big Lord of Darkness. He's here to steal your soul, and he's building a casket. He's talking with Paul Bearer. Those are great for what it was, but just because of the character in and of itself, it was going to have its limitations. He literally maxed out and did as best as you could with a given role like that, and he's had to do it for 30 years. So think about how good he actually had to be to have something that's so monotone, so predictable in its own right, work that he could still evolve the character. This is something that, everybody would not have been able to successfully pull off. Like Vince McMahon actually came up with the character of The Undertaker, and Mark Calloway, the guy who actually is The Undertaker, was the only one who could effectively pull it off.
Okay. All right. So let me say this with the gimmick, right? And do people love so the Stone Cold gimmick, right? Let's just say from 96 to 2002. 96 to 2002. Everybody loved it probably just as much as Taker's.
I'll give you more of 98. 96, that wasn't because you still had prime HBK, you still had Undertaker on his top. He kind of like the Austin 316 helped to boost him, but he really wasn't main event. I would say he was like, if we're grading him by tiers, he was probably like a tier 2 superstar versus a tier 1, and really main event guy every pay-per-view or most of the time. He was on the come up, but I would really say his true run was 98 to 01. You really got like out of that 6 years, 3 is really his true peak during that time. 96, 97.
Well, 97 is when Stone Cold started to take off. Like that's
right.
Because he joined in 96, and it took 1 year.
Right.
Right. Go ahead.
No, what I'm saying is you're right about that. 97 is where he started to bloom. What I'm saying is you don't compare 1997 Stone Cold to say 1999 and say they're on equal level. That 97 Stone Cold was clearly on a different level, whereas though 98, 99, 2000, 01, I would say was like that same level. And then after 01 is when it started to tail off. But here's the thing. It took him a year and some change before he actually started to blossom. He still wasn't technically tier 1 superstar, guaranteed main eventer. Undertaker had already in less like exactly a year to date. He debuts in Survivor Series 90, Survivor Series 91. He beats Hulk Hogan, who was the Stone Cold of his time as far as popularity and being that main not the baby
right.
face.
He was already a veteran for
no, but wait, I'm let's not get it confused. I'm comparing Undertaker's
long time. He was already a veteran, but
what I'm saying is Stone Cold in year 1 from whenever he debuted in 96 to 97, he was not a number 1 tier 1 superstar yet. In less than a year, Undertaker already rose to it. So exactly a year on the date, he's the champion, and he beats the Stone Cold of the time with popularity. The equivalent of Stone Cold doing that, he would have had to beat somebody like Taker, Bret Hart, or Shawn Michaels at a WrestleMania. He wasn't there yet. So we're not comparing the years. We're comparing Taker's year 1 to Stone Cold's year 1. And Taker's year 1, he was already a superstar. He already was winning best gimmick.
Now you can't do that though. You got to compare. I'm saying this is what I'm saying.
He did it in the more
97
he
to
did it in the
2001
competitive era too. Look at the era. Look at the era.
Yes. Right, but that's what I'm saying. Right, I'm gonna put it like this. Right, I'm saying from let's just say you can say you can say 98 to 2001, 97 to 2001. In that short amount of time, he became an legendary. Right, Undertaker's legendary.
Okay.
But in this short amount of time, Stone Cold was the face. He was the guy. Even as, like I said, from 97, it's still up and coming in that Stone Cold role. It took over. It took wrestling to new heights.
Can I ask you something
It
real
took it
quick?
to
Because you
new
keep
heights.
bringing up 97. You keep bringing up 97, and that really wasn't one of Stone Cold's best years. So if Stone Cold is the guy you say he is in 97, he actually, do you remember this? He had a championship match against Undertaker and he lost. If he's everything you said and 97 is equal to 98, 99, 2000, why didn't he beat him in that title match? Which was his first shot at the belt. Undertaker was
I'm not
actually,
talking about. I'm not
now you
talking
think
about.
about it,
Listen, I'm not talking
Undertaker
about
helped put
wrestle.
Stone
I'm not
Cold
talking
over. He
about.
gave him his first title match. He gave him his first WWF titles
Right.
match. Why didn't
What
he beat him then?
I'm saying in right, we're going give it. We're not going in ring.
Okay.
Right. We're not going as far
Okay.
as right because the Undertaker's been in wrestling for 30 years. Right. Was changed the wrestling world. Did it not?
So this is what I always do when people say stuff. You got to explain yourself. When you say change the wrestling world, how did he do it? What was the way he changed it? Because Undertaker changed it with the special match. Are we still having Hell in a Cells and all these special event matches? Like he was the pioneer for stuff that's still going on to this day. What
Right.
exactly the Stone
But
Cold? Because
drawing
we're
the
talking,
crowd.
you're finding a bunch of similar, the same ways to say popularity. Everything you're saying can summed up with one thing: popularity. We stick his face on a WWF ice cream, it sells. We print out an Austin 316 shirt, it sells. Cool. You're saying one point: it's popularity. So what exactly did he do to change? What did he do to shake up the industry to add something new? I'm not hearing that.
His whole persona. You can't say you can't. We all can see
Okay,
him. We all
he
watch
was an
wrestling.
original character. He was an original character that was relatable and people liked it, so he was popular. We got that part. Just like Drake is popular. Is he? Does that mean he's the best spitter because he's popular because he got a bunch of streams? No, because when we put him on songs with other heavyweights, sometimes he gets the upper hand and sometimes he gets washed. That doesn't mean he's the best because he's the most popular. Like Cole was a lot more.
Okay.
Cole was a
Right.
better
But
spitter. He's a better rapper than Drake. Drake makes a bunch of hits. Put Cole and put Drake on a track, and I'm willing to bet the house Cole is going to watch him on a verse. Drake's going to do his
okay.
part. He's going to
Right.
deliver,
So we
but
can say.
he's not going to have the upper hand on Cole. This is the same thing.
So we could say. Right. We could say Stone Cold and the Undertaker are two of the greatest ever. Correct.
Mount Rushmore, lock.
Right. Right. Okay. So let me put it like this. A lot of people will say, myself included, that Biggie Smalls is the best rapper ever, and he's only got 2 albums.
He is. He is.
Right. So Stone Cold's short span is just as great as a 30-year span. Can we not say he's the greatest?
So here's the thing, because I like the Biggie analogy, but I'm a big Biggie fan. He to me is definitely the GOAT. But here's the thing, which you have to keep in mind, right? And this is why I think the comparison is a little bit off. Even though Biggie dropped 2 solo LPs, that wasn't his only music. He had a ton of features. Obviously, he carried Junior Mafia's first album, which is another classic. So I throw that under his catalog. And then the same thing, No Way Out, even though it was a Bad Boy Collective album, we know who carried it, especially on a lot of the major singles. So, I'm not trying to be biased, but I'm just saying, keep in mind, Life After Death was a double disc album, so it wasn't like that was just a regular, say, 10 or 12 song album. That was 20 plus songs, so you can count it as 1 or 2 albums if you like. But it's a super classic. We know Ready to Die is a classic. The Junior Mafia album's a classic, and he had heavy influence on another album. So it's not like he just made 2 albums and say, all we have is 20 songs, but these are like 20 elite songs. He actually, and then on top of that, we even get to his features and stuff. If you start looking at the features, freestyles, he put out a lot in a short amount of time, and it stood the test of time. But it's not like he had just 30 songs to pick from, and that was it. So that's why I think the comparison's a little bit off because yeah, short Stone Cold had a shorter run, and I don't want to sound unfair. I don't want to blame him for anything. But if we really want to just get like brutally honest, Owen Hart fucked up. Bottom line.
Yes.
It was an accident. It wasn't supposed to happen. But part of the reason it did happen is because, like you said, Stone Cold doesn't do all these fancy stunts. The way that move happened was it was a reversal, and then the reversal of the reversal. So Owen Hart was expected to pretty much carry the highlight of the match. And Stone Cold and him had a conversation where he was saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm used to getting the power driver on the knees. Are you going to do it on the knees?" Owen said, "No, I'm going to do a sitting one," because he had to, carried the body weight and all of this stuff, and was forced to be the one who brought that epic highlight to life. And because of that, Stone Cold just didn't question it because of his, I guess, lack of in-ring ability. And like I said again, I don't want this to sound like I'm blaming him. I'm trying to throw him under the bus. He's still one of my favorite just people. And it hurt me as a child to see I might never get to see one of my favorite wrestlers again. But if we're being brutally honest, that was the result of his lack of in-ring performance and other people having to step up and kind of like take the brunt of the weight to pull the move off. Because you could have just said, you know what, I'm not comfortable taking the power driver sitting down. Let's not do that. Or if we're going to do it, it has to be this way, or we're just going to find another way to do it. He didn't do that, and he was expected for somebody else to carry it. And then the worst of the worst happened.
Yeah, and like I said, he got in his career it was cut short due to injury. You can say the Bret Hart sharpshooter with the knees, and you can say that Owen Hart. But in the Owen Hart thing, if you watch Stone Cold interview, just like you said, if you watch the video, you can see clearly that Stone Cold head and he ain't catch the between the thighs. Man, he took the full brunt of that.
Yeah, his head was below his hammy. You could see it.
Yeah, and
But
like,
again, I'm not trying to blame him for that. But again, when you're an elite athlete from the standpoint of conditioning and stuff, and you can pull off moves, but you're expected to depend on somebody else for something that serious, and the worst of the worst comes out of that. I'm not saying it's Stone Cold's fault. What I'm saying is this. At the end of the day, because we know wrestling is scripted, and that was something that was expected to be this big draw, and it's a reversal of reversal. Because no offense, Undertaker and Kane pulled that off in WrestleMania 14. Undertaker, they wanted to really play up that storyline of Undertaker's never going to fight his. First of all, his brother's real. Then he's not going to fight his brother. Kane's just. I thought Kane was at your house. It gets dark, and then we don't know what's happening. Next thing you know, Kane's there coming out whooping everybody's ass until no superstars are left but the Undertaker. But in the same thing in a WrestleMania, which is their version of a Super Bowl, and you didn't know, the streak wasn't even a big deal because Undertaker's just so great. We didn't even know it was a streak till he got to about like 10 or 11, and they were like, "Wait a second, you know what? He's never lost at WrestleMania," and then now it became a thing. But in the midst of all of that, there was a moment where they're playing him up because the man Glenn Jacobs he's a strong SOB, and they wanted to play the reversal of he's overpowering Undertaker, so Undertaker's doing his thing, and Kane reversed on him and gave him the tombstone. And these are two 330-pound guys. So all that flipping and doing stuff midair is actually harder to pull off, and they still did not injure each other because again, the in-ring performance is at the highest level. So I'm not saying again, don't blame Stone Cold for the injury, but you have to take accountability, know your limitations, and say, you know what, we or I actually can't pull this off. So maybe it's not a good idea to do this. Stone Cold didn't do that because he just went with the flow, which is cool. But look what it did. It cost him his career, and now he's a human being. That's still an injury. Now that he's in his 50s now, I'm sure it hurts a lot more now than it did then, even when he was wrestling and taking hits. This was a serious thing that could have been avoided.
right, okay, but you could say that also makes one of the best comeback stories of wrestling. I broke my neck, and I'm still here. Right.
So why didn't he win at
So
WrestleMania?
another thing that
That would have
we
been
want to go. I
that
want
would
to
have
ask
been
you
a
a
great
question, right,
time
on the
to
Undertaker
highlight
side.
it. Okay.
Ask a question here because, like I said, there's no in this debate. There's no way that I can prove that Stone Cold was a better wrestler compared to the Undertaker, right? But I want to ask you a question from the Undertaker side. What's what is one of the Undertaker's most iconic WWE moments.
I mean, which one do you want me to pick from? There's so many. Like every time he does
I
the
just want you to pick. I
tombstone,
want you to
it's
pick.
iconic to me.
When it comes to mind, right? And you got to think of the best. Let's just say moment that happened in an Undertaker storyline or a match, right? What's the best moment?
I would say the one that's going to stick out is probably throwing Mankind off the top of the Hell in a Cell.
That's very iconic, right? One of, can we say, and I'm gonna point this out and ask open question, defend if you want, but can we say one of the most iconic moments of the time for Stone Cold when ECW pulled up to the WWE, came in and started whooping everybody's ass. Then all of a sudden, Stone Cold comes in and takes out the whole ECW until we get in the ring. Now, if we remember, I'm throwing a little shot here. Undertaker was in the ring getting his ass kicked until Stone Cold showed up. But that moment in wrestling, in wrestling, is probably one of the most iconic moments in the WWE. Would you say that?
All right, I'm gonna ask you
Go
something
ahead.
because I don't know this off the top of my head and I should know it. How old are you?
I'm 30.
Okay, so you're a little bit younger than me. That's what it is. Because that moment happened in '01, I think. I was a little bit older. We weren't moved by it as much as you. I think that was just part of you being a little bit younger and a little bit more captivated. Easily, if you want to talk Stone Cold, I mean, you should know this is the guy you're picking. Hands down, a bigger, more iconic moment than that was the beer truck. You could pick any one of them, but I would say specifically the one right before WrestleMania 15. He's spraying the Rock, Shane and Vince are in the ring. That's hands down a lot more iconic than that. It's not like that's not even close. You can even talk about when he poured the cement in the Corvette. These things compare like that little shit you talking about. That's very mid, bro. I'm sorry, very mid. And let's be honest, the thing that put WWF over the top, Eric Bischoff admitted this out of his own mouth. The thing where he said the Monday night battle, the wars are over. The pay-per-view battles are over was when that Hell in a Cell match happened, which, oh, by the way, Undertaker was not the main event. Stone Cold was the main event with Kane, and we can all agree, hands down, as the main event, you didn't follow that up. Like that Hell in a
I,
Cell Mankind versus Taker is not only
I
just
don't
the
think.
best match of that year, not just the best match probably in Taker's career. That's probably the GOAT match. Period. That ended the wars between all these things. So the merger happens because these other federations lost to WWF and then comes back in. So you bring up a point about Stone Cold doing
Wait,
the same whoop ass
hold
and
up.
drink beer thing after the wars are over. I'm sorry, bro. That's not even as iconic as you're thinking. If you talk to anybody between the ages, we'll say of like 30 to 40, that might not come up in 10 moments between the 90s and the early
Well,
2000s. That's not coming up right away. Nobody cares
I
about
just,
that.
I just want.
Matter of fact, more iconic moment that year is Undertaker chokeslam Rikishi off the Hell in the Cell. That's more iconic from the same year.
Hold on. I'm gonna go back to one of your point in the beginning when you used Eric
Okay.
Bishop as not a credible source for when you mentioned Stone Cold. Eric Bishop never thought Stone Cold was going to make it at all. That's why he fired him from the WCW.
That was his loss because Undertaker was there before him too. That was his loss.
So I don't think, but like, I hear what you're saying, but that's one of the most
But
like
bro, that's
Stone Cold's
apples and oranges.
iconic moments are Stone Cold's iconic moments. Anything what you said with the beer truck outweighs anything
Listen,
that's in a match in the ring. Besides your one point, the throwing Mankind off top of the cell is probably one of the most iconic moments of wrestling.
period.
But
But here's the
Stone
thing.
Cold
So
has more the
let's
Stone
not
Cold has more
I want
memorable moments.
more memory. I don't know about that because here's the thing. The whole entire streak got played up in WrestleMania. Not to say every single WrestleMania was an iconic moment, but who saw the Undertaker winning a handicap match? Who was like Big Show and some other big dude that I forget. He had a handicap match. Nobody saw that coming. Once, like I said, Kane put the reversal on Undertaker and he kicked out of the tombstone, which nobody had done to that time because Kane was just brutalizing everybody. That was just them fighting was an iconic moment. Kane's debut because he's a Hall of Fame character that you can spin off of the Undertaker. ripping out the door in the first Hell in a Cell moment. That's an iconic moment. Even when Shawn Michaels, he stepped on his hand and he fell through the table in the same match. That's an iconic moment. Obviously, Mankind, that
Man,
entire match. You can go back to '94 with his rivalries with Yokozuna in the casket match, and you got like 15 wrestlers coming to fight him, and then he kind of shoots through the sky and does this little weird ascension thing. Like this, what are you talking about? I mean, his debut is one of the most iconic things. The mystery partner, and they're talking him up, and he doesn't flinch. And they're like, "Who's this big dude?" And you can't hurt him. Just him getting hit in the match, and he sits up. Like, who? Name another wrestler. Like Undertaker is so iconic in everything he does. He had a signature way to pin you. He would hit you, drop you on your head like you were a dead person, which is called the tombstone, and then he gives you a rest in peace pin that you don't kick out of because he's crossing your arms and he's over top of you, and then he does the signature eye roll back. Like everything he does is iconic. Like, what are you talking about?
man, the middle
Matter of
finger was
fact, I
way
got
bigger
something
than the
for
eye
you.
roll.
And this
There's
is the
more people
thing
doing the
too.
middle finger than the
Undertaker,
eye roll.
I'm gonna show you something right here because this is what makes Undertaker so great. He never, ever, ever broke character. If you saw him in public, he would still look like the Undertaker. Anything in match or backstage or whatever, he always did that. And I'm gonna show you something. So everybody, like all the sports fans, will remember the no flinch moment with Kobe, right? Where Matt Barnes was on the baseline, he faked throwing the ball in his face, and it was iconic. Kobe's tough, he's mentally tough, all these different things, no flinch, right? So before Kobe did that, Undertaker had a no flinch moment. Do you remember this?
I can't see. For some reason, I can't see your screen. Everything on my screen is like locked.
You hear what Shawn Michaels said? Because this was fresh off of Undertaker when he disguised his cane and he just wanted number one contender. Shawn Michaels said it doesn't matter who you are, Stone Cold included, because he had the belt. He said he's always the number one contender. And the thing is, the reason why I brought that up is there was an accident right there. So Undertaker's doing his signature ring thing. He's lifting his arms up, and it's supposed to be like the explosion, and then the lights change. They accidentally had Kane's little fire thing, and in the midst of him doing, which was completely unexpected, fire blowing in your face, he just calmly moves to the side. That's his no flinch moment. He steps into the ring. That's something you can't teach. Just to always be in the zone, always in character, never break that. That's something you can't teach. And even you admit, they say Stone Cold's the toughest SOB. Let him have been doing his Stone Cold thing in the ring, and that popped up. I'm sure he would have jumped down like he was getting shot and was running for cover. That's something you can't teach. That's something that's just iconic in and of itself. He never breaks character.
I don't think you can say that because you can resort back to the the
Wait, you
sharpshooter
said you
that
didn't
Stone
see
Cold
it.
got.
Do I play? You don't think you can say it? I got to play it again so you can see it. This man just had a whole thing of fire jump in front of his face, and he didn't even do as much as flinch. What are you talking about? You might have to watch this on the playback version so you can see that, or I'll text the link so you can watch that.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't see it, so I can't set the point. But I get your point. It's not breaking
Okay.
character. So, but they're two. They're two. When people talk about Undertaker and Stone Cold, the word "tough" is always used. So you can't say. I
Well,
mean, you
let's
can
rank.
say they're both. Go ahead.
I'm gonna I'm gonna address something else you said because obviously Stone Cold is tough in different things, and you always talked about like the badass and all this stuff. Here's the thing though. Here's a fun fact for you as well. So when Stone Cold was getting ready to fight HBK at WrestleMania 13 to win the belt, HBK, he was always known to be a little bit cocky. He was good friends with like, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash and stuff. So they're in his ear about trying to get him over to WCW. He's the champ. He's real cocky. He's feeling himself. Now he did injure his back in that casket match at a Royal Rumble taker. So he was going to be on medical leave at some point anyway. And they figured, hey, Stone Cold's finally building up to this main event guy. We're going to have him headline WrestleMania because they obviously chose him to win the Royal Rumble and everything. And the thing about it is HBK was not so he was, let's just say, he was a little reluctant to want to lose the title to Stone Cold period, but especially on their Super Bowl at WrestleMania. And you know who it was that made sure it happened? It was none other than the Undertaker. Because aside from the in-ring stuff, since you don't want to talk about in-ring performance, that's cool. We know that's a wash. Let's talk about actual toughness in fighting. Undertaker is 6'10" in his prime, 330. He can and will whoop your ass. And the thing about it is, when Shawn Michaels said he wasn't ready to, turn over the belt, and he might essentially sabotage the match, which would be the WrestleMania main event, Undertaker pretty much taped up his fist backstage and said, Shawn, you're going to do the right thing, and you're going to carry and put him over, or I'm going to whip your ass in real life, not in no match, not nothing. You're already going to be on medical leave. I kind of fucked you up by accident in the match. Now I'm gonna make sure you're out, and you're not even going to have a say in this. And that was Undertaker. That was not Stone Cold. He wasn't the toughest SOB then. He didn't have enough pull then. Speaking of which, the Undertaker, not Stone Cold, is the most respected guy in the locker room, bar none, hands down. And the ultimate proof of that is there's this thing called Wrestlers Court where if there's issues, Vince basically kind of has like a peer editing thing, and Taker's the judge. Why? Because one, he had the most respect. Two, he could actually whoop your ass. But three, and most importantly, along with that respect, he was somebody that everybody looked at as objective and fair. So he wouldn't, do harsh things like actually, you know, beat people up all the time. But you'd have to buy cases of beer, you have to do certain stuff, and people went to him. Everybody unanimously said he's the guy, and he's going to be the one who's trusted to settle issues among peers. It wasn't Stone Cold. So you can talk all this popularity, all this stuff, but in actuality, he kind of rubbed some people the wrong way because he wasn't as bad as HBK with being cocky, but behind closed doors, he wasn't the guy everybody essentially respected from the standpoint of the person. They respected his character and different things as far as what he did for the business and drawing in money, but they didn't think he could actually be fair and objective in settling disputes. So he wasn't the guy that was trusted to do that. Undertaker always was.
To your point, fair point. But when you're the guy of longevity and you're the guy that's been around for what's it say, 15 years, and you happen to come across a good guy such as the Undertaker,
At
it's
that
almost,
point, it was only about 5 to
I want to
7
say, an
years.
irrelevant point.
15 years is the mid 2000s. We're talking the 90s, bro. It wasn't 15 years in the 90s. He came in 1990 when it was Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior. You still had Flair. You still had Macho Man. There was a bunch of guys. Like he came in and was basically not just the. Imagine you're the rookie of the year, but you're also the champion at the end of the year. That's what Undertaker did. So I get what you're trying to make the longevity argument where it doesn't stick right here. We're not talking about in 2005 where you got guys like John Cena and those guys are starting to be headline. We're talking mid 90s, around the time the 96, the 97, the 98. He was the guy. He was only been at that point. It was less than 10 years, so they were pretty much on the same level. Especially since you're saying Stone Cold had reached popularities and heights nobody else did. So this is not the time to make the longevity argument because that has nothing to do with longevity here.
Right. But I'm saying that fact that you're bringing up.
That's all I bring up is facts, man.
Right. Right. Okay. So I understand. Right. I get that. But the only thing the cinematic points of wrestling, right? Of the promos of shit happening. Stone Cold is the pioneer off-screen events that took wrestling to a new level with the cinematics and the storylines, and just more than just being in the ring and wrestling. That greatness shot wrestling through the roof. Yes, the Undertaker is great. He bought fans, but in the other side of wrestling, you got to fill the seats. You got to bring
You had to
in.
sell pay-per-views. That's not true, and I'm gonna tell you why that's not true. In the Monday Night Wars, you had WCW with Nitro, you had WWF with Raw. They were battling for viewership, which is how you get sponsors, you make money, and that was ultimately how you sold your pay-per-views. Selling out the arenas was nice and that was cool, But you didn't. If you didn't say to sell out a Sunday Night Heat, that didn't matter as much as say not selling out a Royal Rumble. So all of that stuff was always every week was to build up the main pay-per-view, and then within each month you had something. But then you had the big four of pay-per-views. So at the end of the day, filling the seats was great. But what you wanted to do is you wanted to sell the pay-per-views because if you're selling that, you get the viewership at home and you're selling out the arena, then now you can sell the merch and stuff. So everything was a push to that point. You're telling me selling out some random Monday Night Raw in Kentucky is just going to do it? I'm sorry, that's not it.
Well, he didn't just sell out Monday nights. He sold out. He sold out pay-per-views. Arguably, you could say, and you could, in fact, that Stone Cold is part of the top 15 greatest matches in wrestling ever.
So I'm gonna ask you this then, because I strongly disagree with that. Who is it? So, and this is part, people can like who they like. Who would you say is a, better, more popular wrestler? All these things that we're talking about, right? Is it Mick Foley or is it The Rock?
It's The Rock.
It's The Rock, hands down, right?
Yes.
Okay, so with that being said, show me when you talk about this big three of matches with The Rock and Stone Cold. Show me one match that he has that is on the level or surpasses the Hell in a Cell with Mankind. There isn't one. Even if you want to go back to '96 with the Buried Alive match with Mankind, there's not a good one as that. Go to the other one. I think it was like a SummerSlam when Paul Bearer turned on the Undertaker and started managing Mankind, and they had Paul Bearer hanging above the ring, and whoever if
Yeah, there
Mankind
might not be
won.
one, but there.
Right, but what I'm saying is if you really, so I was gonna save this for later, but since you brought up, I'm gonna address it now. Stone Cold, as great as he is, and you would even, like you just said, you would agree, The Rock is a bigger name, it's a bigger draw. He fought him at WrestleManias. He still doesn't have a match that compares to another superstar who's not quite as good, but still a legend in his own right, and Mankind. And he's so popular. He had a WrestleMania main event against HBK. That wasn't on that level. He has all these matches with The Rock. That wasn't on that level. He
Right, you
even
could
had
say on the
matches with
wrestling level, but
Undertaker,
on the
and the best
entertainment
one.
level, Stone Cold's pay-per-view sales outsell the Undertaker.
That's not necessarily true, and I'm gonna give you a
Because
fact on that. Just
the
even at
Stone
pay
Cold
per
was a
view,
bigger
right?
draw, though.
Again, we're using popular. You're
In
hanging on to
pay-per-view.
one point the whole debate, bro. You gotta come with a stronger point than this one because
You
you
could,
were talking too heavy to
but I'm
hang
saying,
on
but
one
pay-per-view
point.
includes all the series, though. The
Yeah, but
pay-per-view
guess
is
what?
pay-per-view is
I'm gonna
all
show
the
you
series.
something. I'm gonna show you something, right? So you know what the highest rated segment on, any, we'll just say regular event was? If you want to include Sunday Night Heat, Raw, SmackDown, you know what the single highest segment ever was? Over 11, almost 12 million viewers for the segment. You know what it was? You get to share credit in this. It was the match between The Undertaker and Stone Cold, and it was the summer of '99 when Undertaker put the title up for grabs before pay per view, and Stone Cold beat him. Now, granted, Stone Cold won the match and everything, and they were part of the segment. But if it was just about Stone Cold, just about his popularity, he's the biggest draw. It could have been with anybody. Why wasn't it when he fought the rivalry with Mick Foley? Why wasn't it when he fought Kane the night after King of the Ring and won the belt back? Why wasn't it with The Rock or any of these other characters? It happened to be with the guy who's right there, who's at the upper echelon, and he makes everything better. It happened to be the Undertaker. And to put in perspective how big that is, having almost 12 million viewers was rivaling at the time Monday Night Football, which wrestling doesn't come close to doing now. And on top of that, the highest or the average you could say that WWF gets now, or WWE, whatever, gets now is about Raw kind of caps at about 2 million. So you're talking about almost 6 times the viewership for the last match of the night. People staying up to watch this before they go to work, you name it. Kids that, might have been young like us. Yeah, it's summertime. We might have summer camp the next morning, but we're sneaking up and we're going to go watch this match. It could have been with anybody. It's not a coincidence. It happened to be with the Phenom.
Right. Two greats bought in the most pay-per-view ever because they're two greats.
It wasn't even pay per view.
You
This is
say
this is a Monday night
Stone
segment.
Cold. and Undertaker, bought the pay-per-view that them together bought the most together. Right?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it
But
doesn't even have to be a pay-per-view. It could be a Monday night segment. Who Taker was the champion at the time, so he's still the top guy in the industry, at least from holding that belt. And yes, Stone Cold, they wanted to see that match, but guess what? You get to see a pay-per-view caliber match before pay-per-view, and again, it was the other guy that mattered just as much as Stone Cold. Because if it was all about Stone Cold, it could have been him versus the
right,
Brooklyn Brawler.
but Undertaker
It
don't bring
wasn't
in those
just against
numbers without
anybody.
Stone Cold on that match. But if you take any other wrestler besides that, you put Undertaker and some other wrestler, they don't bring in the same.
Wait. So
Same
you're
pay per
telling
views.
me
But you take
so
Austin and you
let's
put
use
him
the
in
same
there,
scenario.
and now
Let's use the same scenario. It's a title match because you remember this isn't just a regular match. This is a title match. You're telling me Monday because it happens rare. You don't get a lot of title matches on a weekly program. You're telling me a title match. We'll just make up a year. Say it's Undertaker is the champ. It's
right.
99, 2000 is whatever. He has a title match with The Rock and they already are mid rivalry and they have an up and coming pay per view match. You're telling me Rock can't do those numbers with Taker? Of course he could. You're talking about
Maybe
a pay per view caliber match with the belt on the line, and you're telling me Rock would be able to do that draw? Of course he could. It
he could
just
do
didn't happen
numbers,
because you didn't get
but
title matches
but
like that.
but
He
at
was
the
the Stone
time,
Cold number two. We
Stone
got to
Cold was
stop
the
acting
guy.
like Stone Cold was
The
always
Rock
the
was.
champ. Man.
You're talking about that match. The Rock was up and coming. He wasn't the guy yet. So I
The
don't
Rock
think
was
if you
up and
took
coming. Wait. The
the
Rock was
Rock
up
at
and coming in 1999.
that time
The Rock was
and
up
put
and
him in
coming in
the match with the
1999.
Undertaker,
In 2000.
then it does those numbers.
Wait a second. How's a guy up and coming after he already had two title runs and multiple classic matches and
I mean,
rivalries? You're
like I said,
telling me in the summer. Wait. You're telling me in the summer of 1999, The Rock is up and coming? Are you crazy? He was a full-fledged superstar. You know how many people in the hood was wearing them silk shirts
okay, right, but
and button the
there's
top with the
also another
gold
guy we could have
chain?
did in this conversation.
Your ability to boost Stone Cold up is blinding your judgment, bro. The Rock was a bona fide superstar in '99. He wasn't up and coming. He already had
But that
fought
goes
Stone
either
Cold in
way, though. The
Ring of
Rock, but
WrestleMania.
right. If we have a conversation, you could still argue. You could still argue both, could you not? Right? If I took you, we had another person here arguing The Rock and the Undertaker. It's almost in the same level of argument because it's still greatness. I think The Rock. You put The
Right.
Rock in that. It's almost put as for like draws. Stone Cold S tier, Undertaker's S tier, The Rock's S tier. Right? So you can't put an S tier with S tier because draws are going to most top S tiers are going to draw the same numbers. But if you were to put Triple H and The Undertaker, I guarantee it doesn't do the draws that Stone Cold or The Rock would do.
It might not, but I can tell you this: WrestleMania 17 is widely regarded as the best WrestleMania start to finish. I would agree. I would have to say there's a couple in the discussion, but that's clearly up there. Undertaker and Triple H might not have been the most popular, might not have been the sexy name in the main event and all that. That was a hell of a better match than the Rock and Stone Cold. Because first of all, Stone Cold only got four moves. So after he does his four moves, the Rock kicks out the stunner. All he did was kept beating him with the chair. Then he just did a random pin, and that was kind of shitty. That's how we cap off of WrestleMania, really? Yeah, Undertaker and Triple H matches was definitely better. And here's the other thing: you want to talk about classic matches? Stone Cold does not have a bunch of matches in the top 15. We could definitely say that about Undertaker, and a lot of those came post Prime, where he did the career versus the Streak HBK classic. Those dudes were in their 40s. Then you get the back-to-back WrestleManias with Triple H. The same thing. The Streak is on the line, no holds bars. He was giving you all-time great matches, winning Slammies, winning other critically acclaimed awards past his prime. So what are we talking about? What are we
Greatness.
talking about? Matter of fact, we want to
But
when we talk great,
but
let's
these are
talk
things
greatness.
you can look up. You could right, but as far as you're not putting part of the entertainment fact that goes into the part of wrestling too. I think that's you're not giving that the credibility that it
Well,
gives because
no, 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 no,
this
no,
is
no, no, no.
sports
I'm
entertainment.
giving it full credit. I'm giving it full credit. This is the thing. So, and you talked about Stone Cold storylines and different things. Let's be truthful, right? The best storyline ever in pro wrestling history was the build up and the character of Kane. The fact that people to this day still think they're actually blood brothers. You know that people for a long
It's the
time people
biggest
did
lie in
not know that they
history.
were not actually. It's the biggest lie, open lie in history that people willingly accept because why? It was the best storyline ever. You have this fun fact people don't know. Undertaker's original character name was Kane the Undertaker. When you see him in his first couple matches, they say that, which is where that whole thing came from. They used the spinoff. But the idea that Paul Bearer turns on him, your brother's still alive, then he's saying you're lying, then you find out his brother is alive. Then Paul Bearer supposedly is the father of the younger brother, and Taker's mom was cheating on his dad, and then Kane, he lights their graveyard on fire. Then Undertaker and Kane, you think they're, seeing eye to eye. Then he interferes in Undertaker's match at Royal Rumble, costing him the title. We forgot about an iconic moment too when he gets locked in the casket. This gets sets on fire. Then you think he's done forever. Then you get that lightning strike on a random Monday Night Raw months later, and he comes out of the casket, says, "I'm gonna do what I never said I was gonna do. I'm gonna fight you." And the first fight is WrestleMania. Are you kidding me? That is hands down the best storyline. Stone Cold has nothing that matches that storyline. Vince McMahon stuff included, because the Vince McMahon stuff is a rivalry. That's not a storyline. There's a difference. You want to use storyline, you could talk about the rivalry building up to WrestleMania or something. But as a story that was so believable, you thought these people were actually blood related. Come on, nothing comes close to that. Are you kidding me? Stone Cold can't match that with any storyline he's ever had. He was actually married to Deborah, and I mean, as much of eye candy as he was, the relationship didn't work, and he couldn't even use that to his advantage and make her a great manager. Look what she did for corny ass Jeff Jarrett, and, when he was the guy with the guitar, and then he eventually became a tag team with Owen Hart. He couldn't even use Deborah to his advantage as a manager and stuff. And we're saying he has a better storyline? No, he doesn't.
Right. But to my point, right? So as far as storylines, Stone Cold was probably one of the only guys in the company that could go to Vince and and that whole, and we could also say that whole the Vince rivalry storyline that go with that, like the owner of the company, right? If you know anything about Vince McMahon, his father didn't want him to wrestle, so given the chance, with the whole Stone Cold and the Boss thing, it was like one of the greatest rises in wrestling in the story, and one of the greatest storylines in wrestling. The whole beef with the Boss and all those things with Vince McMahon. The Kane story was crazy, right? It was crazy. But like the rivalry with the storyline, the rivalry was way better than Kane and Undertaker's. Even though it was the Boss, you could say someone was corny, but it sold. It
All right, so
showed.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm gonna ask you a question. We're gonna see if you're telling the truth or you lying. All right, we're gonna bring up three things, right? Undertaker's debut was that a classic moment. His debut was Survivor Series. Rocky with us.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Was Undertaker's debut a classic moment? Survivor Series, he's the mystery partner. Was that a classic moment? Yes or no? His debut.
Yeah.
Was Kane's debut ripping the door off the hinges in the Hell in a Cell? You get the little fire thing we seen for the first time, and then he tombstones Undertaker. That was his debut. Was that a classic moment or a classic debut? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Now, do you remember when Stone Cold made his debut? He was under the same management, or at least from the storyline perspective, of Ted DiBiase. Was Stone Cold's WWF debut a classic debut as well?
Uh, I wouldn't say classic.
You wouldn't say classic. So notice this. The two guys that I just mentioned are basically one and the same because the spinoff of the storyline comes from the main guy, which is him right there, the Taker. And we clearly see that there's two iconic debuts, so much that Vince McMahon himself trusted them on one of his 4 major pay-per-views, and this guy that you're saying just does everything right, can't miss, doesn't even have a classic debut with the same manager that Undertaker came in on. How is that?
But the debut, listen, when you're comparing the debut to the Vince storyline and things of like people thinking things are real, right? Because remember, like you said, we believe that Undertaker and Kane were brothers, right? That was the storyline sold to us. You know, the hardcore Stone Cold fans and the real crazy fans, right? Vince had to get security for 4 months because people believed that Stone Cold wanted to fuck up McMahon. That drove fucking regular Joes that when they see McMahon, they wanted to fuck him up too. That's real thing that happened from that storyline. That alone, those points right there, and just the fact and belief in things that are real, that's iconic. It's crazy.
I'm sorry, that's not quite as iconic as security is needed for a bunch of different things, but security being needed is nowhere near comparable to somebody thinking they're actual blood. So this is the thing. People thought that they were blood relatives, and what people forget is Kane's real name is Glenn Jacobs. Glenn Jacobs was in WWF for a while before Kane, about a couple years. He was the fake Diesel, who was another superstar, and that was the spinoff character. I wonder why that didn't work as good as pairing with Undertaker. Maybe because Undertaker's the GOAT, and you can't just expect the highest level of execution just alongside anybody. Anyway, Kane's fake Diesel that was short lived, right? Remember when Jerry the King Lawler had this mad dentist guy, Isaac Yankem? That was Kane too. That gimmick didn't work long. There was like this Christmas monster thing that was a thing for like a year and some change that didn't work either. And this was all Glenn Jacobs' character. So somehow, when you put them alongside the real GOAT, and GOAT things start to happen. When they first did King as a character mock up and they were starting to build the storyline, they didn't think he was going to be long term because they're like, you have to live up to the standard of The Undertaker. This was almost impossible because you have to be able to execute in ring and do stuff continuously. And now, if we build you into a solo character, can you live up to it? Undertaker definitely guided him behind the scenes and backstage, but because Glenn was such a great wrestler, he was freakishly strong too. I think you could talk about guys like Mark Henry, Big Show, even like John Cena and Brock Lesnar. Kane doesn't get enough credit about how actually strong he is, um, because a fun fact with him, Brock Lesnar was real cocky, and he liked to have arm wrestling matches, backstage, and they would put money or beer on the line and stuff like that. One person not only that he could not beat, he didn't even move his arm was Kane. So Kane doesn't get talked about enough with his strength. But the point is, when you have somebody that sets the standard so high, they didn't even anticipate that Kane can be as good as he was because the standard of being a part of the Undertaker storyline, and then obviously you're going to have to match with him in ring, it's hard to live up to. But to Kane's credit, he did a great job. Obviously, copying his signature moves like the tombstone, the choke slam. He did his own version of the flying clothesline. These are all things that we can do from a guy who's the best. Because when you're the best, that means there's no upgrade. We can pull from it. We can add a little this, add a little that there, but we know we're going to get top end results. That's not the case consistently with Stone Cold. It's only in bits and pieces of his character and storytelling.
See, you only mention Kane, right? With the
No, I can't, but I
storyline,
was
right?
waiting for you. Go ahead. Go ahead and open up this can of worms. Go ahead.
Right. And I'm saying, but
Go
you
ahead.
refer to Kane a lot, and I just want to go a couple points before I get to what I'm saying, right? Because I understand that you're saying the Undertaker made Kane greater, but you can also say in an aspect, right? Undertaker was already great, but having Kane drove up Undertaker a little bit. Would you agree there?
Hell no. Where are you going with that? I don't see
What
that
I'm
at
trying to say is
all.
like, okay, the wrestling from the entertainment side, right? The entertainment side of the wrestling. Would you say, right, that Kane storyline, that the whole storyline, could you not say that it jumped? People started, more interested, so you like the Undertaker, right? So it made both of them greater, right? You can say the same thing, Rock and Stone Cold. They're iconic together, right? One made each other greater. They both elevated from each other.
Hypothetically speaking, right? So Kane emerged in '97, and they built that storyline up almost to the end of '98. So you got a good year and a half, people say maybe 2 year run of doing something, right? So if we before Kane even came into the picture, in '97, Undertaker had won the belt at WrestleMania. He already was a legend and stuff. So, what exactly was Kane going to do to take him to the next level where he already wasn't at? If we extract Kane out of the WWE, he's never a character, he's never a thing. Undertaker still has the streak. He still has the early part of his career. You still have the Attitude Era. What exactly did Kane do to elevate his career? It was a great and I think the best storyline ever. But if we take that away from Undertaker, we're not going to sit back and say, you know what, he's not arguably the GOAT. I think he's the GOAT, but you're not going to say he's not arguably the GOAT. He's not Mount Rushmore. We really needed that Kane storyline, I think, to build him up. His character was getting stale. Undertaker was always ahead of the curve. His evolution and his ability to stay relatable, but also stay in character is unmatched. He could do it any which way you need to. He could change his facial, he could shave his beard and dye it and grow it longer. He could go back to the redhead. He could have the 5 o'clock shadow. He could have the braid and put the bandana on. He could shave it and have it low. He could do the mohawk. He could change his ring attire. He could change his pre-ring Titantron stuff. Whatever you need him to do, he could do. Matter of fact, even look at his music. In the Attitude Era, when they started to make it a little bit more like kind of like rock and roll and stuff, they elevated and changed his music so it wasn't just that classic stuff, and it still sounded good. Once Stone Cold changed from that classic glass break and that theme song, it lost its appeal. He had no evolution even in his theme music. Once you changed it and tried to make it, a little bit more up tempo and rock, and then now you have, some words as far as lyrics and stuff, it didn't have the same appeal. Undertaker completely, he changed his thing with his Ministry of Darkness thing and still kept that music. Then he went to have the thing keep rolling, right? The Kid Rock thing, and he comes out on the motorcycle. That worked. Then he has the, it's my yard, dead man walking, that thing. He does that. Everything he did didn't miss.
Right. But your point that it didn't miss, but the Stone Cold bit didn't miss either, and still arguably one of the best.
Because he didn't make
What
many
works for you in
changes, Rob.
wrestling is
He
what
had to.
works for you in wrestling.
I'm gonna give it to you like this. Stone Cold's run and his whole look and everything is a classic example of don't fix it if it ain't broke. Because they tried to fix it and then they broke the whole thing. Just as soon as he did that bad heel turn, just like the glass shatters and he comes out, that was the glass shattering on his career. You kind of pulled the rug from underneath him. It was no way to go back to what it was beforehand. Because when you see him shaking hands with Vince McMahon, looks like he's turning his back on WWF to team up with the Alliance or whatever that thing was. It lost its appeal. The fact that his health is not as good and you didn't see him in his ring as much, it kind of added to the mystique because it was almost in a sense like bringing back in that 316
Yeah,
when he
but
originally
change
got,
happens to
but he couldn't. He didn't.
dying characters.
What I'm saying is when he let me be a little bit more clear so you can see clear examples of what I'm saying. Every time Stone Cold effectively tried to go away from what made him popular, it didn't work. Right? Undertaker, like I said, he could change his costume. He had to do it multiple times. Everything he did work. And
Change
Stone
happens to
Cold,
dying characters.
but wait, let me finish
Dead man
because
wasn't
I'm
bringing the
getting
popularity.
Stone Cold admitted it himself. Listen to his podcast if you didn't listen to this one. He talked about how he got bored with the same black tights and this and that. So he tried to change, he still need to wear his knee brace. Remember when he tried to put that ugly ass snakeskin or he tried to put the red on and stuff? You couldn't even change a color in one part of his ring attire without it losing its appeal. He said he knew it didn't work. It stunk. He tried different things. He went away from it quickly. It never worked. He didn't before when he was in WCW. He was clean shaven. He had the long hair. That didn't work. So when he got to WWF and something finally
Right,
worked, he just stuck with
because nothing
he
was
just
like
stuck with the
it's
gimmick
like
and the look that worked for
but
him.
the
He had
listen
no
with Stone
character
Cold,
evolution.
and it was one of the and it was the biggest look of all time.
Because as soon as you change it, now it's not the biggest logo of all time. And not only is it not the biggest logo, matter of fact, it was one of the wrestling publishing magazines. The year he did that heel turn in '01, he got voted as one of the most hated wrestlers, and people hated that. My point is this: yes, if it's not broke, don't try to fix it. But anytime, forget trying to fix it. Just adding a little tweak, doing this, doing that. As like I said, it's like you completely pulled the rug from under his character, and you could go. It was 0 to 100. You were the favorite baby face and the most popular thing in the business, so you can't even do one effective storyline heel turn, and now the whole allure of your character is completely zapped. We speed up the music in your song and change the a little bit, change the instruments a little bit. Now your theme song doesn't have the same appeal, and now we have to depend on just the glass shattering and stuff. What I'm saying is this: is great. And this is the thing. With all of that being said, if I'm putting a list together, I'm probably still going to have Stone Cold as number 2 because that, like you said, that iconic peak, it was something to behold. You truly had to be there. But we're not saying that just because it was effective, it was essentially the best thing. Like we brought up the music comparisons earlier. Somebody sells the most records the first week or just has a more popular album. Does that mean that even if it is a classic, it's better than something else that didn't sell the most? Of course not, because that would be a ridiculous argument.
It's a ridiculous argument if it, but like, see, this is where it's hard because wrestling is entertainment, right? Everything's entertainment, but when you sell the most and you are one of the best, it's hard to argue.
Okay, so let me ask you this because I'm gonna stick with the music example, right? Because we all know for a fact there's sometimes the Grammys get it right, and some things are just undeniable. Some songs, some projects, whatever the case may be. But wouldn't you agree that the Grammys, a lot of the time, the reason why they award the wrong artist or the wrong record is because it's more based on popularity than it is on quality? Could we at least agree on that? Well, I don't know if you agree or not, right? I don't know if you're there, but anyway. So what I'm gonna say is this: most of the time the Grammys gets it wrong, and because they get it wrong, they perpetually get it wrong because they go to attempt to award people that maybe they robbed in the past, and in case and you doing that, now you're robbing somebody in the present. So with all of this 6 year dominance that Stone Cold had, he's the most popular thing since sliced bread. Everything he does is so golden and can't be touched. Fun fact that people overlook and forget about: the WWF has their own version of the Grammys called the Slammies, right? So if Stone Cold's the most popular thing, wouldn't you think he would run away with these awards? You know how many Slammies Stone Cold's have? Because we could talk about he doesn't have the longest career, but he had this dominant run. He's got two. One, not one, but two. He's got two Slammies. And as popular as he was, because the thing, in all fairness to him, the Slammies were not every single year, but they happened frequently enough that if he was that guy, he would have had more than two. He's got two throughout his career. He has one as an active wrestler. The second one he got was from the Broken Skull Session podcast, right? So he got one during his peak, and he got one afterwards from a.
Me. Oh,
Damn, he got smacked down there, bro. What's going on? We'll give him a second to come back.
Pull to me.
Yeah, you probably kicked him out because you don't want to hear him anymore.
Damn, why would I do him like that? He
I'm
was
all
on a
for
roll. Why would I do him?
We're gonna give him a chance to come back.
It's a good argument. He had me on the ropes. I think I had him on the ropes. I'm waiting to bring back my next point. Hey, there we go.
Back
Okay,
up.
technical difficulties, but we back at it.
Such
You
a
got
powerful
two.
argument.
You
Just
can address
kicking us
that.
out the chat room.
We'll finish it off.
All right. So here's my right. So it comes down to this because no matter what sports or entertainment, it always comes down to Michael Jordan, right? We call Michael Jordan the GOAT because of that run from 92 to 98. So
Don't do that. Here's the thing. Since you're going to use that argument, I brought up the Slammies, right? It cut me
say
off because it wouldn't be.
LeBron Jordan, right?
All right, here's the thing.
Because
Your own argument.
Austin also he's a six-time world champion.
Okay. Undertaker has won just as
six-time
many.
WWE world champion, 3-time Royal Rumble winner. Nobody else got that. You know what I mean?
Wait. Why don't we address your? He only technically won twice because the 1997 Royal Rumble he actually got eliminated, snuck back in, and the ref didn't see it. So they had an elimination with the final four, which is why Undertaker won, and he headlined WrestleMania, and he won the belt 97. So this is what happened when you try to use Google. But I don't know how old you were in 97.
Brian been in 10 champions. Brian been in 10 championships.
He didn't actually win the 97
longevity.
Royal Rumble, so don't count that. Okay, but guess what? Because they cut me off when I was about to make the point. Because they wanted to give you a little bit of a chance. Stone Cold, for all his popularity, for all his championships, right? He got 2 Slammies, right? So this is the Vince McMahon, other peers vote on this stuff, right? They have input, right? He's the best thing since sliced bread. He gets 1 while he's active. He gets 1 for his podcast later. Undertaker is tied with HBK. You know how
entertainment.
He has the most ever. He has the most ever. It's not 1. It damn sure ain't 2. It's not even 5. He's got 15. What are we talking about? He's got 15 compared to 2. You just brought up championships, right? Explain that, right?
No, I remember he got thrown out.
It's actually
he snuck
weak
back in the
when
ring.
you actually go with the stats. Your own argument is weak when we bring up
if I cheat to win, if I cheat to win, fans care about no Slammies.
Yeah, but guess what? When it was time to lace up them boots and go do the thing, did Stone Cold get his title shot at WrestleMania 13 since he won the Royal Rumble? Why wasn't he at the main event of WrestleMania 13?
You bring up what I'm saying. Austin is a 6-time champion, right? Undertaker's is a 4-time champion, a 3-time heavyweight champion.
So that means he has 7. It's not his fault they switched the names of the belts. And guess what? Undertaker was so great. He was bigger than being the champion.
Explain when you say the Slammies, right?
From 92
to
96.
Explain to me the 0 awards,
still heavyweight. Wait, what happened? Awards.
Let's not bringing up the 0 Wrestler of the Year awards.
Okay. You think I don't know about that? All the Wrestler of the Year. So let me ask you something. Wrestler of the Year. Here's the difference, though. You're bringing up Wrestler of the Year, and yes, Stone Cold has had that many times. We're not discounting that, but here's the deal with that. Those are a bunch of critically acclaimed people across different companies and stuff. We're talking about, wouldn't you agree, WWF, especially in the 90s, as good as Goldberg and everybody else was, Sting, WWF was clearly better than WCW and ECW. Will we at least agree on that?
You could probably say that Monday Night Wrestling between the 90s was probably the best thing on television.
It was, and it was rivaling Monday Night Football. But what I'm saying is, if you had,
you could say
at the end of the day,
if there's probably the best thing on television,
and there's a bronze.
Like television itself.
But just sticking to pro wrestling, though. Just sticking to pro wrestling. If we say there's a gold winner, there's a silver winner, and there's a bronze. WWF is gold, WCW is silver, ECW is bronze. Would we at least agree on that? In the 90s.
Yeah.
Okay, so if WWF is the gold standard, Why do we need to look at outside figures and people across all other spectrums when we have the gold standard right in front of us? Stone Cold won all these Wrestler of the Years and stuff when they're looking at the impact because WWF is on the top and they boosted him at the top those time and he was popular, no doubt. Again, within the own company, he's not the most respected guy in the locker room. He's not trusted to be the judge of wrestlers court. And on top of that, when it comes to their version of the Grammys, which all of them within the company, which is the best company in the gold standard, has the ability to vote for multiple things. He has one award in his entire wrestling career. The second one he got was post career. How do you explain that? Everybody else recognizes his popularity and stuff, but the people right next to him, the people in the matches, don't see it the same way. How is that?
Because you're basing it on inside company. I like,
yeah, but
and
guess
not
what?
on the whole
Regardless,
perspective of wrestling. Because
we
it's the matter of the day.
If you want to go by that, because I was waiting for you to bring this up, I didn't know if you would be ready to go this deep in a rabbit hole. But if we want to go there, how many times did Stone Cold win match of the year? He won it like one time against Bret Hart at that WrestleMania, and he lost. Undertaker got that like 5 times. You said he got some of the best 15, 20 matches in history, right? Well, other people don't see it that way. And the same publication you're talking about had the ability to vote on that, and they did not do that. So why is that for your GOAT?
All public opinion. Everybody got an opinion on something, right? It all
and everybody
ties
agreed
into that.
Their opinion
but
said
what
that
I'm
he didn't
saying
have
is, what
some
I'm
of the
saying,
best,
because you brought it up,
matches year
I'm
to
just saying,
year,
but you
even though
brought it
you're
up.
the most popular guy in the business, right? Even though you were headlining main events with The Rock. How does he not have at least one match of the year with The Rock at WrestleMania? That should tell you something.
That's a good point there. Yo, so
0 MVPs.
You guys been going back and forth here, been dominating it. We're going on like an hour and a half of a debate here. I think if you guys got any points left, I mean, you better throw them out now.
All right, I'll go first. My last point is this.
I think we've covered about 90. I think we've covered about 90%.
This is what I was getting ready to say, because we did cover a lot, but I wanted to get into this because you brought up some of the rivalries, the classic matches and stuff. Let's be clear. This isn't due to longevity, because I don't need to, because you got to remember something. Longevity and stuff is cool, but let's be honest. Undertaker was depended upon to continue to bring interest to the Monday Night Raws, to the SmackDowns, and some of the WrestleManias, which is why he was continuously brought back. But that wasn't his prime. So really, if we're counting anything past 2005, it's a waste of time other than the WrestleManias where he gave us those matches every year. But if we're just going with, say, the first 15 years of his Hall of Fame career, and we say 90 to 05, I don't need to use later than that. He has better rivalries and more of them than Stone Cold. Early in his career, you got Hogan, you got Ultimate Warrior with the body bag, you got Bret Hart. Then in the middle of his prime, you obviously have Kane, you have HBK, you do have Stone Cold, you have The Rock, you have Triple H. We don't even, I forgot somebody, Yokozuna, somebody like that. Like that was one of the another award that he won with I think it was the Battle of the Year or something of the year rivalry or whatever with Yokozuna. He continuously brings it at the top level. Let's be honest, Stone Cold's classic rivalries, yes, with Vince, half of that's not even in the ring. That's just you hate your boss. Okay, cool. And The Rock. Where are his other classic rivalries that we can put on the level of what Undertaker did? Mankind, that's another one that I forgot. Classic rivalry. Stone Cold's classic rivalry with DX?
You could say it's a classic rivalry, him against the whole DX.
I know you didn't just say that.
Is that not part of his rivalry? That's one of the main. It's also one of his main rivalries against him and DX.
The closest you had to
you
that
can't say that's
was
not
when
one
he
of
beat Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14.
You can't say that's not one of his rivalries, though.
Classic rivalry, one subpar main event match with Shawn Michaels where he didn't even want to give him the belt is what you're bringing up on the level of Rock and Austin. You can't be serious right now.
You asked rivalries, right? The DX
Where are the matches?
was a whole
Rivalry. Wait. Rivalries
yeah,
have more than one match. They have
that's
the
also
storyline.
that's the thing.
Where's
You
this?
go back to the
Where is?
match
Name me.
payment of him versus
You
DX.
said you said earlier he had 3 classic matches with the Rocks, and that was a trilogy. All right, cool. I'll spare you one. I'll just give you 2. Where's the 2 classic matches with DX members during that time, during this rivalry you're talking about? When did that happen?
And I'm bringing up matches.
And I'll give you one.
Moments in the
WrestleMania 13 Shawn
WWE.
Michaels. Where's the other one?
I didn't say matches.
You can't, because they didn't exist. That's my point. So how's it a rivalry?
Just because they didn't fight.
He cannot have a match with Vince McMahon and it can be considered a rivalry.
Because it
was.
Wait.
So you're telling me just because he has a rivalry with Vince McMahon, now a rivalry
Stone
is
Cold,
all
Stone Cold
outside
ever fight members of the
one segment? What?
It's a memorable segment, though.
Right there, right?
People remember Stone Cold.
It's a self-defeating argument. I'm gonna let you talk.
You're telling me people don't remember. Wait, you're telling me people don't remember Stone Cold and the DX rivalry. That's what
you must have been real young, and you must have, your mind must have thought it was bigger than what it was. Because there's no way anybody, if you say name Stone Cold's top 3 rivalries through his career, they're going to say DX. They're not going to say that.
People remember, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure people who watched the wrestling in the '90s remember Stone Cold and DX in that time period.
I was in that time period. Matter of fact, shout out to my boy Mike Pearson, because he can attest to this. This is a true story. Because when he commented on Stoop Life, he said he thought I'd be taking the side of Stone Cold. But this is a true story. Mike can tell you. I'm not making this up. Back in this was like between 98, 99, so he's probably like 4th or 5th grade. Mike was a part of a crew we had because we was all into wrestling. We actually had a wrestling gang on the playground where people would pay us in like money or pretzels, and there was this tree at the top of the playground. That was our fake Undertaker symbol, and we had when he had his Ministry of Darkness, we had our ministry on the playground, and Mike was a part of it, and a bunch of me and my other people. We couldn't have did that with Stone Cold because he had no such thing. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when you're talking about these classic, iconic moments and stuff like that, even something like that, where he's helping to bring up other superstars. He has this thing. How come Undertaker can be partners with Vince McMahon? Remember the real rivalry that happened with the corporation and the Ministry of Darkness, and then they combined and they came to corporate ministry, and Undertaker was already a heel, and he combined. How come he can join forces with Vince McMahon? It's a great storyline, and it works, and it's fixed. But Stone Cold did it after this was already a proven concept that can work, and he flopped.
Because he was on his way out. Because he was on the last end of his career.
So he's on his way out, and then he makes it. He's on his way out, and then his outro. That's not Jordan. That's not 40-something points in the game-winning shot in Utah. That's Jordan on the Wizards. That's your outro.
And hold on, yeah, I like that. Outro? I like that to bring up the Jordan on the Wizard. Right. People discredit Jordan on the Wizard, but he still was balling. But he's still balling on the Wizard. He didn't put Jordan numbers up, but he's still.
Jordan on the Wizards brand outro is Stone Cold's equivalent, and this is personifying greatness.
He wasn't Jordan in the '90s, but he was still. He was still a top 5 shooting guard at that time.
We actually did. My fault. My bad. He didn't play shooting guard. He played small forward. But then again, I don't think you remember 2001 because you also said that epic ECW thing was epic and it wasn't. But that's a whole other thing. But what I'm going to say is this: at the end of the day, I hear all your points.
I couldn't say if there was a pause.
Right now, you're speaking with bias. You're not hearing how you sound. So no, just bottom line, no. At the end of the day, we're actually somewhat disrespecting Jordan by comparing Stone Cold's in his career to Jordan's, because at least he would still put up 20 a game. That WrestleMania match Stone Cold just did was very mid. That was not a classic match, and I know he hasn't done it in so many years, but the stunner looked flat. The match wasn't working. It was all popularity and drinking beer and stuff, but we've seen all-time great classic matches out of The Undertaker. So even to compare the last bit of Stone Cold to Jordan's Wizards is actually a little bit disrespectful to Jordan's Wizards, even though that team couldn't be elevated to playoff level when you could be a below 500 team. So that's actually still disrespectful. So we shouldn't even make that comparison.
Well, this has been great, fellas.
Closing argument time.
Closing argument time. Well, let Rock, you go first.
I'll go. It said in all instances we gotta remember about Stone Cold was Stone Cold. The name says it for himself. And when you bring up wrestling part, you can say he might not have been the greatest wrestler, but one of the greatest entertainments in wrestling in TV that you could probably ever see.
All right, you good?
Yeah, I'm keeping it short and sweet,
right,
man. We've been on this for 2 hours.
I'll just say it like this. There's many legends, there's only one phenom. The phenom is the Undertaker. Whether you're talking in-ring performance, whether you're talking classic music, classic manager, Titantron, special matches, everything he did is top tier, which is why he's the GOAT. We don't have to lean on longevity. We don't have to depend on other people to carry the match. You put him in there, he's a superstar immediately. He helps build other superstars. His legacy is something that cannot and will not be matched, or none.
Hey, y'all say this, guys. Y'all did great. Both of you came with strong points. The one thing I do remember out of the whole thing is, Rock, when you were talking about Stone Cold, how everybody wanted to personify that, 100% true. And like Steve said, that's why a lot of people liked him a lot. And the funny part of that is we were 12, 13 years old. We wanted to slam beers and beat our boss up. We didn't have a boss. That was our parents. We did personify that. And then on the other end, Steve, when you were talking about most memorable moments, two of the most memorable moments I remember are from Undertaker, and one of them was Mick Foley throwing Mankind through the cage, which was unbelievable. And then the second one was
I'm scarred for. I can't even. If I think about that, I still get like this the tooth hanging in the nose, man. It's iconic.
It was crazy, and it was great. And it's crazy. You should have kind of remember him for Mankind doing it, but you remember everybody remembers who threw him through in that match. It was unbelievable. But the second one is the most important one that I think. The other day I was talking to my mom about you guys doing this debate because obviously she let us watch it, when we were kids, and she till this date, I said we're doing Undertaker versus Stone Cold, and she's like, obviously she knew who Stone Cold was because we used to stunner each other through the house. But she said Undertaker's the one that has that brother, right? And she thought they were brothers till this date. So you're not lying about that point. People still believe that shit. And people see Kane in movies and they think, well, that's Undertaker's brother. So great debate. Paul, I'll leave it to you.
Hey, man, this was a breath of fresh air. First and foremost, not being able to talk about football, basketball, and debate that and just talk about our childhood, basically. This is our childhood we're speaking of. It's great. And both of them kicked ass, man. If I was an outsider looking in, I'm looking at it like this. If I didn't know shit about wrestling, I always do this when I'm listening to these debates with you guys. If I didn't know shit about wrestling, and Rocky's debate about Austin, he's the regular guy aspect is pretty badass. But Taker, his ring presence was major. And Steve brought that up. That I forgot how big his ring presence was until I came on here and listened to it. Hell of a debate, man. Hell of a debate. I'm gonna say the best thing about wrestling, it is entertainment, and it's all opinionated. So this is great, man. This was a good one. I appreciate both of you guys for coming on here. Yo, is that a chalk line in the back of there? Is that a chalk line jacket?
You already know. That's what I was. This was today's outfit. You know what I mean? I got my Taker shirt on. We came ready. You know what I
mean? Yo, I love it.
I do want to say, man. I do want to say, Steve, man, thank you for debate with me, man. That was a lot of fun.
Man,
It was a
Rock,
great
the
argument,
pleasure's all
man.
mine. Like I said, as much as I love boxing, and I'm not even as big as boxing fan as you, PJ, but I love boxing. That's something I always would watch with my grandmother. My dad has OG, like original magazines, and wrestling ones too. I was more passionate about this debate by
I
far.
see.
Not
I can
even
see
gonna lie, I
it.
was way more
You
passionate
came in
about
here
this
like
one.
we
I
were
wanted
about
this
to.
to
I feel
happen.
like I know you always do your homework, but I think you really came in prepared, like beyond for this
Well,
one.
I'm
This
gonna tell you
I see
something.
fire.
A lot of this wasn't even homework because one thing I always tell people, like all my young boys, like when we talk about music, and I was putting them on to like years like '98 with music, right, and different things. I experienced this, right? I always tell people you can do as much research as you want, and it's close to the experience, but it's something to be said. But actually being there and living through the time, because these are things that are like burnt in my memory. I remember certain things sneaking up to go in my older sister's room so I could watch wrestling because I didn't want to miss the last segment, right? Stuff like that. So I lived through this. So be honest with you, some of it was like a little bit of homework just to, make sure I don't forget the points I want to bring up, but I lived this. I lived it and I experienced it. So I didn't have like it's a lot of it's just memory.
Like I said, like this was our childhood for a lot of
Yeah.
us. Like wrestling was our childhood. It was first priority, even over football and boxing. Like
And
wrestling was
that's why I
life at
wanted to
me.
bring, and that's why I was glad we started talking about the pay-per-views and the ratings and stuff. Because when
Yeah,
even in Stone Cold, like I said, he's still my guy. But with people, it's hard to get these young people to imagine wrestling was so popular, WCW included. It was getting higher ratings and more viewership than Monday Night Football. And don't sneeze. We're talking about Dan Marino's in the league, Elway,
yeah,
Favre, Barry Sanders. The Cowboys were actually good. Just how long ago this was.
yeah.
And people didn't want to watch Barry Sanders and Emmett battle for the Russian title. They want to see Undertaker versus Stone Cold. They want to see Rock versus Mankind, Kane versus, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is how crazy it was. And you had to be there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. You just had to be there for that.
Yeah, it was great. But yo, guys, thanks for coming on. As always, you guys did a hell of a job.
Oh, yeah.
We appreciate you hopping on, man. And we'll have you back on soon. So thanks. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something here about debate or brought you back flashbacks of your childhood, because I know it did me. And I'm gonna probably be choke slamming and pile driving and
I'm about to
stunning.
go. I'm about to go stun on my daughter.
Yeah, I stopped what.
All right, fellas. You guys have a good
And tune in next week. All right.
Have a good night. Be safe,
Tune in
everybody.
next week.
peace out, y'all.
Yeah.